There we go. There's Kate.
Sorry about that,
Hello.
folks.
Hello. Yeah, I was just saying earlier, this is Lori. I set this up as a webinar. I don't know. I think it was just like force a habit. Like that wasn't very smart because it's just a small group of us and we talk all the time anyway. So I don't know why I didn't either just do Zoom or just do a GoToMeeting. But anyway, I unmuted everyone's phone, I think, so that we can all just kind of have a general conversation because I think we have some people in here who have done rounds ones and round twos before and are familiar with that and some that may not be. So I thought we could just have like a informal discussion about it if that works.
Lori, are you going to record this too for those that aren't able to attend?
Yep, it's actually recording. So
oh no.
No, that's okay. That's our conversation earlier. I can chop that off in Camtasia.
Nice.
So yeah, so it's all good. So definitely, I just want to make sure I have everyone. I'm going to pop out my attendee list here and make sure everyone's unmuted. Oh, Brandon is muted, unless he wants to be.
No, I'm good now.
Okay, so I think you can mute and unmute as you want now. So I just want to make sure no one was left out in the dark there. So.
Yeah, someone came in the office right when I joined and she was talking, so I muted it first.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. I'll leave it alone then. So, are we ready to get started, Stuart? I just kind of jumped in. Did you want to preface with anything, or you want me to just dive right into it?
The only preference I would say is just, again, for those of you all that have gotten your emails out to your reviewers, letting them know that everything is started. That's awesome. Continue to keep me updated if you're not hearing from people or if you're leaving people off. Some of y'all may have heard Laura, my conversation earlier about her having enough people, but I think other than her, everyone seems to be okay with their reviewers. Secondly, with the communication, it's really helpful if you all are CCing me on those big emails because, again, that's just helping to remind me if I need to remind other review coordinators to do something. Or if there's something I see with your email where I'm like, hey, you may want to give them this information or something like that. And that's just that's to be able to kind of be supportive of you all in making sure the messages is on point there with the process. But I know you all have been putting in a lot of work over the past week because now we're rolling, and I really appreciate it. And I just want to thank Lori because I know that we say this a lot, but I don't think we can say it enough. The things that she does behind the scenes to make this run seamlessly for all of us is incredible, especially when you look over the maturation of the process from the past 5 or 8 years. It's grown by leaps and bounds how easy it is for us to do it, but that's because of some of the things that Lori has put into place and some things that she's doing behind the scenes that we don't even realize. So thank you for that, Lori.
Oh, thanks, Stuart. Excellent. Well, it looks like we have, let's see who's here, Brandon and Dave and Kate, Laura, Melissa, Tanya, and then Stuart and myself. So, and as Stuart mentioned earlier, I'm going to record this for anyone who may have missed it, or obviously if there's anything that I cover that you wanted to go look at again on the webinar, you could do that, or it might be just as easy to just go ahead and email me, and I can walk you through, or anything that that you need. Oh, there's Stuart. Oh, and he disappeared. So either way, yeah, if at any time, you have any questions or anything that, I have mentioned that isn't clear, please let me know, reach out to me on email and I'll get right back to you. So one of the things I wanted to kind of start with, I know that Dave and I were talking earlier. I know this is a new process for some, maybe not for others, but how many, and I should have all the phones unmuted, but how many of us is this new to?
It's new to me.
This is Brandon. It's new to me.
Okay. So
new for Kate. It's new to me too.
New to me too.
New for Brandon, new for Kate, new for Dave. And there could be others on the list, and then there's some that have done this before. So I'm gonna back up a little bit and just talk about the, I keep talking about round 1 and round 2, and so I want to go back and make sure that makes sense for everybody. So right now, we are in round one. Round one is where your review team is now, you're sort of an observer during this time. So your review team is in the system. They are going to log in and do they're going to view their entries, do all the scoring, and you can't really see that. I do have you as review coordinators, I do have you, sort of in the buckets so you can see the programs that are in the buckets, but just looking in there, if you're looking around to see scores, you won't see them. That doesn't happen until round two, and it's just kind of the nature of the way the system kind of works. So that's why I had sent an email out, I think yesterday, it seemed like longer than that, saying, hey, I've got everything set up, but if you want to see, I call it a scorecard. And basically what it is it's like a little report that I can run out of the system that'll give you like an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll give you the names of your reviewers. And it'll say, you'll see the scores of your reviewers. So you'll start to see some activity in there. So that's the way that you'll sort of see that. And then when we move over to round two, which I think starts January 3rd or 4th, that's when you'll move over to a dashboard where you'll actually see that dashboard in the system. And then that's where you actually do your work, which consists of taking a look at what your reviewers have done, and then going in and sort of putting in your own scores. But basically what you're doing is you're figuring out which ones of those programs you're going to accept, which ones you're going to mark as alternates, and which ones you're going to mark as declines. And before I forget on that, at some point, Stuart and I will be, and I've already kind of started to work on this, we'll give you some guidance on how many programs you should be accepting, how many should be, sorry, my dogs are barking. Sorry about that. How many should be alternates and how many should be declines. So does that make sense? We'll kind of send an email out and say, okay, for bucket number one, here's your numbers. And so that'll be sort of a guide for you to tell you, kind of how many you should accept, decline, and alternate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll do that probably relatively soon. I'm going to try to get it done tomorrow, or next week is almost pretty much like our last week already. So I'm going to try to get it done before that, seeing as round two starts, right after the holidays. So I'll be working on that this week.
The other thing that's new for this year, if you've been a review coordinator in the past, is to set us up for a mid-year meeting. We're going to be doing a different way before. We're going to be trying to make sure we scaffold it in a certain way. And what you'll be doing when you also decide about how many you're accepting, your alternates and your declines, you'll also be taking those that you accept and be thinking about if somebody was interested in and take, for example, learning everything there is about faculty engagement, how would you scaffold those in a way to where there's kind of a progression through the course of the different sessions? What order would you put them in? If somebody's like, I really want to see every program on this, what would make the most sense for that? And we're going to ask that you also think about kind of the scaffolding of the ones that you have, about what order you would kind of set them out. Does that make sense to people?
Yes. Are you going to provide topic areas, Stuart, or is it just going to be whatever we see as sort of themes, thematic?
We're going to ask that you're the ones that actually kind of tell us what themes kind of shake out, and also that you kind of decide that on your own, since you'll have the best idea of the ones that kind of scored the highest, and in looking through what you have as alternates, what would make the most sense for your buckets. The reason we're doing it this way, just to kind of give a little bit more context, is because at the actual mid-year meeting, we're going to pair people up, and you will take other people's recommendations of the way that they scaffold them, and then also kind of put them up too to make sure that it makes sense. So it's a way to where there's going to be a check to where if you could scaffold them and with your themes what you would do, Christine, Marcus, Lori, and I are then going to do another run through to see, kind of what we see from it. And then we're going to have a third group that's going to go through and kind of put them up in that order. And in doing that, we hope that this is a different way that's going to help out with some of the pacing in the conference, and also be more thoughtful about the way different eyes are looking at it. Again, it's different than what we've done in the past, and rather than talking about what we've done in the past, this is just a more but we hope a thoughtful way to kind of think about that progression. But there'll be more instructions coming out to you all about how to think about this soon. Just wanted to kind of put this nugget out there about this is where we're going with it.
Okay. Thanks, Stuart. Can everyone see my screen? I have put up the document that we had, I think, sent out a little while ago, sort of the step-by-step.
Yep.
Okay, great. This is just, I'm not going to I am going to go through it, but I won't, I'm not going to read it and go through it step by step. It's just kind of for reference for you to refer to and make any notes on. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of walk you through how you're going to log in, how you access the programs that are going to be in round 2, and then the actual, active scoring them and, typing in the comment box and then submitting it. And then keeping in mind that I have this set up in last year's competition because I don't want to do anything with the data that we have in our current competition. So it's going to say 2018 and it'll be obviously last year's. I'm just working with some drafts that we had last year, and our fictitious reviewer Batman. So I'm going to jump into that, and I'm going to switch over to. So you should be seeing the Akuwai homepage. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna when I log in as Batman, I'm actually gonna do it through the console instead of the portal like you would. So pretend that you logged in with your Akuwai credentials by hitting this login button on the home page here. And so this stuff that I'm going to show you on this tab won't happen for you, but as you see, there's Batman's profile. I'm just going to log in as Batman. You won't have to do any of this. This is okay. So after you've logged in, you're gonna, you may have to choose whether you're, between individual and organizations. Obviously, you always want to choose individual. You're probably used to logging in, so you've seen these screens before. So when you get to your home page here, to your profile page, when you scroll down under applications here, that's where you're going to see this link that says review entries. Now yours is going to say 2019. It'll say 2019 Akuwai Conference and Expo. It's much shorter, nicer. So you click on that and see this little box up here. You're going to want to switch over to round 2. It may do that automatically. And see how in round 1 it said there wasn't anything, because by the time you get to round 2, everything will have been moved. Round 2, everything will have been moved over. So here will be. This is just sort of a pretend bucket with some drafts from last year. So here will be the programs that now your reviewers are done doing their work, and you're ready to go in and say, okay, I'm gonna look at my cheat sheet that Lori and Stuart gave me. I'm gonna figure out which ones. And sometimes people if it were me, I would probably go through and view them all using this view entry here, and then maybe note on either a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet. It's totally up to you. Kind of get a feel for maybe which ones I'm going to accept and alternate and decline. And then, at the point where I'm going to go submit the scores, I might go in and, actually just sort of auto entry them. But it's totally up to you. It depends on how large your bucket is too. If you only have 4 of them like this, it wouldn't be a big deal, but some of them have 70. So, that's a lot, and it's a long list, and it might be hard to keep track of. So that's totally up to you how you want to do this work. And if any of you have done this in years past and have any tips that you want to share with others, we'd be glad to hear those too. But basically what you're going to do is, this is the process of saying, I'm going to see this view score button. Now, if you hold down your control key and click that, it'll open up a new tab up here that I can switch over to. And this is where if you have 2 screens, it's really helpful, because you can view, obviously, the scores on one screen, maybe the entries on another. It's going to take you to this dashboard. And you can see that Marcus and Stuart have done all their work. They've done their scoring. You can see sort of a summary of what they have said. And these are going to be the same kind of things that you're going to see on that score sheet that I send you. And I also, at the end of the process, I forgot to mention this too, before you start this round 2 work, I send you a spreadsheet, a pivot table, and I sort of crunch all the numbers down, and it's a kind of a version of this dashboard. I just think it's a little easier to read, and you can actually sort it and do different things with it. So I'll send that to you also, So you'll have a couple of different tools at your fingertips to help you do this. But it's going to bring you to this dashboard that's going to show everyone. And of course, if you have people that haven't scored, they won't show up on this. Below that is just some information. It's obviously empty right now because Bruce Wayne, Batman, hasn't done any of his own scoring yet. So that's what this page is about. Does this make sense?
Yes. I had a quick question about the links to get there because I have 2 review entries for 2019 links
Yes.
on my profile.
Yeah, you will. And one of them will be like empty.
Okay.
That's because you're on 2 judging teams right now. So I put you in round 1, even though you can't really do anything, just so you could see. And so
Gotcha.
that's the one that's populating right now. And then when you try to click on the link for round 2, it's saying it's empty because there's nothing in there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's what that's about. And eventually you'll only have 1 link in there because when I switch you over, I think I take you out of the other team, and so you'll just have the 1.
Okay.
So it'll be a little bit easier. So you won't have to figure out which one is empty, you know. So anyway, that's what this page is about. And like I said, I give you, I think, a little better summary than this with the pivot table that I do. So I would send those out.
Laura,
Sure.
I'm going to jump for 1 second.
Yep.
For those of you all that haven't seen the pivot table that Lori is talking about, when I reviewed programs, that was incredibly important. And it helps you in being able to sort things. It helps you in being able, if you want to just kind of run some tests to see if there is somebody scoring some low or other things, you can do a lot with it. I found it the most helpful both when I was trying to keep up with proposals or refer back to other ones. I also found it really helpful when I was trying to work through alternates, because one thing we'll talk about with alternates is, you know, you want to have the same program like 4 different times, even if all 4 programs are exceptional, just because it doesn't give us a diversity of programs. So the pivot table is really helpful with that. Some people would come to mid-years with that pivot table and some other electronic documents that they would use. There were other people that were old school that would actually print off their pivot table and also print off all of their documents to where that notes are stuff, so that they kind of could talk about any programs that we need to have a further discussion on. So the pivot table is awesome, and I'm glad that we're going to continue to have that, Lori. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it's useful because I put a lot of effort into those and, you know, formatting to make it, you know, so you can digest the information. Because again, if you have a lot, you know, if you have 4 entries, it's one thing, but you got 70, it's a lot to look at. So, okay, so what you're going to do, this is the important part then, once you decide, you know, how you're, you know, how you're going to, you know, accept things and whatnot, you're going to want to go to submit scores. So I know this is a lot of tabs and pages and things like that. One thing that's important to remember, see how up in this left corner here, see the ID number? So if you have, suppose you pull this up and you have this scoring sheet on one screen and then you're viewing the entry maybe on another screen, you want to make sure these IDs match, because when you get that long list, like it's fine when there's 4, but when you have, you know, more than that, it's easy to maybe you thought you were viewing this one and then you hit submit scores on that one. Like when the list gets long, they're very narrow. And so you don't want to submit scores on, you know, an entry that you weren't viewing. You know what, does that make sense? So it's always sort of a good double check to yourself to say, okay, I'm submitting and I'm doing this for 45635, and then you look at your other screen and make sure that ID matches. And so you're going to have to submit scores, even though you're not really scoring them. They're already scored. And the reason for this is that it simply, mechanically, it won't submit unless you have a score in there. So we tell everyone to just put 1. So just go through and put 1 in here, like that. And then this is where you would put if you're going to accept it. And you don't have to say, I know in years past, I don't know if there's anyone on the call that has been with us long enough where we used to say accept and then we used to say what intercession we were putting it in. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is say accept. So you're either going to accept, you're going to alternate, or you're going to decline. Either one in here. And then you submit your score. And then you go back to your page and you pick the next one and you put in all 1s, and then you put in the comments field what the status is, basically. And that's basically how it's done. I think the hard part is, the mechanical part, I think, of putting in the scores and actually typing in, accept, decline, alternate. And we'll make sure we define exactly what language we want you to use for that too, because I know sometimes in years past we've said not selected, we don't say decline. So we'll make sure we designate that too. But, that part, the mechanical part of it, I think isn't that hard. I think it's the decision making that you have to do ahead of that. I think that really takes the time and effort to do it. And that's basically really all there is to it, unless I've missed something, Stuart, because you've been through this before.
No, I didn't see anything that was missed there. I mean, it's simple, and it really is. The biggest thing is just being able to figure out, okay, once you hit that line of what you've accepted and what's going to be your alternates, really being thoughtful about how you're picking your alternates, because sometimes your scores can be very, very similar. And this is where your really keen eye comes in as review coordinators, because you're going to have to think about what programs are in that you've accepted, if there's any repeats of the same ideas, or if they're different enough to keep in, or if you want to bump one up because of that.
Did you also want, I know last year we were, sorry, this is Melissa, we looked at the comments that they had put in just to sort of double check and make sure that they were constructive in nature. Because I know that there were one or two cases where we had reviewers who maybe were not, the way that they put things was not the best. And I made some choices about whether or not we were going to actually provide that information to the person who proposed the program.
That's a great point that I've forgotten about, and you are correct. We want to make sure that the comments are think that we would be okay with going back out to the reviewers, and I forgot that step since we're now including that. Lori, did you have any guidance on that? Where do you want us to note that, or how best is that done?
I think the best thing to do, I think this is what we did last year, is we asked, and it can be done either before we go to the planning meeting or even after. It's probably better. Either way, it doesn't matter. It depends on how time crunched you are. But I think just keep note of which ones as you're going through them. And you could do this in a variety of ways. You could either just, type it into an email and just say, hey, these 6 proposals need the comments to be looked at or deleted. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if it's really bad, I'll just delete them. And I definitely, I'm the person who has to do that in the system. So I think communication with me on that, and it's usually not too many. Sometimes you might have, if you have a really large bucket, and it's usually kind of like maybe the same person that's doing it sometimes too. So that makes it a little bit easier to identify. And if you just identify what the ID numbers are of those programs, I can go in and take care of those comments. So we just kind of do it sort of on a case-by-case basis, basically.
That is an important step. So let's say that all of that stuff is when you're emailing like who's accepted and who isn't, that you're also including that information at that time too, because that'll give you some time to be able to read through those. And you should be reading through all those comments to make sure there's nothing like that in there. Right.
And, obviously we definitely, before we release the program statuses in the Presenter Service Center in early February, we'll want to have those cleaned up. And I go through them too. I even put them in a spreadsheet and I search for keywords. And then I just kind of read through them too. But yeah, the ones that you catch along the way, that's really the best way to do it. Other things to watch out for too, and these are things that we've told the reviewers as well, is to look out for sessions that look like they're corporate connections. And that's basically a program that has been submitted. What we're trying to avoid, we obviously don't want to have programming that is a sales pitch, or we have a person who just wants to sell their product. So we want to watch out for those, anything that looks like that. The other thing I thought of today, Stuart, that I want to kind of look at is association holds. There are a handful of programs in there that get submitted, but they're actually association holds, like the Right Away program, which is a program that is about, writing for the talking stick that Camille Perlman at the central office does every year. So We should flag those somehow for those reviewers and review coordinators. I think we did a little bit of that last year too.
Yeah, and that's also where the alternates come into play too when we didn't catch something.
Yeah. Yeah. I pulled up one of the pivot tables. Can you all see that? It's got like the blue lines on it. Looks like Laura was on this team last year. This is an example of the pivot table that we talked about a little bit earlier that I do send out. And you can use this to sort numbers and, sounds like it's a useful tool, so I'll definitely continue doing it.
One thing that I'll say too that's helpful with the pivot table, and this is kind of eye test, I don't know if this has ever happened, but I've always been worried about it, is if you have a score that is doing things with the scores that's really making winners and making losers. So if you see a really big difference between the way they're scoring all of the programs, like they're either given really, really high scores or really, really low scores, that's something to think about, and we can talk through what to do if you find that. Again, I haven't heard of it happening, but it could happen.
I'm sure you'll have questions too once you'll think of things, and once you get in there and start to work on it. So obviously I'll be ready and waiting for any questions you have. So feel free to just drop me an email and I'll get back to you right away.
One of the things you might run into is, I know last year I had like one or two reviewers who actually, their own program was actually in there. So I told them to score it. And then when I was looking at the scores overall, I just had to make sure I accounted for that. So obviously there was a missing score for that particular program because that reviewer was like, either it was their supervisor and they knew it, or it was specifically their program that they had submitted. So hopefully that won't happen, but I know that obviously if you have 5 scores for one person and 4 from another, that also could throw off the overall if you average them all or something. So.
Yeah, we actually already had, I know, at least one situation like that, and I think it's in Christine's bucket, to where there's somebody that their program is in that bucket. But the nice thing about Christine's bucket is she has 2 different teams.
Oh,
and
right.
It's able to switch it around.
Yeah.
But I think Christine's the only one that has two different teams reviewing different programs. I think everyone else just has everybody reviewing all the programs in there because of numbers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
One thing that I told my reviewers, which I had told them last year, and this was just based on templates from before, was I actually had them suggested that half the team start from the bottom and half the team start from the top in reviewing. So if you do only have, one group and you're doing it just in terms of exhaustion and looking, so it doesn't turn out that the ones that are lower down the list were all the ones that were looked at last. So they get fresh sets of eyes. But at this point, I know those emails have gone out, but just something that I did do with them.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
Anything else?
Lori, I'm blanking on this right now. Maybe you said it earlier, but how is there a way that people know if their reviewers are actually putting in any scores or not? Like, is there anything that comes out from you or the system to let them know that?
There is. I have a scorecard that runs out of the system that I set up, and I've reached out to a few folks, and a couple people have gotten back to me. I know Dave, Brandon, I think Melissa, I can't remember, a couple other people. So I can send, it's like an automated report, and it's sort of a version of this spreadsheet, but it's not quite as cool as this. It's not pivot table. It'll just be like a listing of your reviewers, and it'll start listing their scores. So let me know if you would like to see that report. If you want to see it every day, I can set it up to run every day. If you want to see it twice a week, I can do that. Or if you want to see it, I don't know if I can do that actually. Now that I said that, I think it might be like I can pick a day or I can do it daily. Do let me know if you would like me to send you that scorecard report and like how often you want to see it, and it'll just run. Like for right now, the first couple that I set up, they're blank because it doesn't look like anyone's done anything in there yet. But if it starts looking like if you keep getting reports and it's like these are still blank, let me know because either nobody's doing anything or the report isn't running quite right. But
The daily can be nice because it can tell you if if you send an email with a reminder after not seeing much in the daily report, like the next day or two, hopefully you then see the numbers go up.
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind too, and this is where I think we're all tactful and sensitive enough to think about how to have those emails if people look like they're not doing anything. There are some people that, of course, wait till the last couple of days to do them all, and they'll let you know that. There's also those that are old school, and they will do everything on a different document and then just go in and enter all the numbers all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you are looking at the scorecard, just remember to give people the benefit of the doubt and ask the question rather than assuming that they're not doing anything, because they may actually be going through it. They just may be using kind of their own system until they input all the scores. But it's something good to keep an eye on. And when in doubt, I really encourage you all to reach out to your group or reach out to certain individuals in your group if you're worried if they're actually going to be fulfilling the task.
Yep, I think that's good advice. Anything else anyone would like to ask or talk about? Maybe that's good enough for 3:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, at least Eastern time anyway. And you have the step-by-step guide too, so we can go through that. And I think we're good then. I really appreciate you showing up and spending some time to take a look at this. I hope it was helpful.
Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, not a problem. And again, we'll be standing by to, any questions you have. I'll be here.
Great work, everybody. I appreciate you all right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.